Hi, it's Luce, part 9 of 30. Aren't we doing well? Starting a business checklist. Now, let me just recap for anyone that has found this video and is new to this channel. I set out over a week ago to do a video a day for 30 days on my journey as a small business owner. I took my passion and I turned it into a career. Now, these videos, whilst may work independently, the intention was that this suite breaks everything down, but really could be viewed as a whole. So if you have been following my journey, what will have become evident over the past few days is that we've had a massive focus on marketing. Now, my career 4 years ago, before I started Bake with Luce, I'm a cake artist, was in marketing. So this was front of mind, but I also know the importance of doing the work, doing the planning first. Marketing is a massive, massive deal when you're starting out as a small business. However, there are lots of other things as well. So I've created a checklist. I found one online and I've sort of changed it a little bit to suit, what it is I did that I'm going to talk about with you now. But whilst we're on that, it's a really interesting and important point. I went from one job in marketing to now starting my own business where you have to wear many hats, including the things that you're not so interested in, not so good at, and probably don't know about. So things like accounts, regulations, all the other legal stuff, the gubbins, the things that obviously I love marketing, I was interested in it. There are lots of other things as well. So yes, I've created a checklist which we can work through now. I've made notes and let's work through the process before we get on to marketing strategies and communications and the things that I actually went ahead and did to grow my business, find customers, etc. So here I have my checklist. Getting started. Do you have an idea? We covered this in part 1. So if you want to revert back, and there might be some crossover, I'm going to refer back to the previous videos because there's a lot to talk about on some of these things. Do you have an idea? Cover that in part 1. Do you have the skills to do your idea? Again, part 1. What's your niche? Covered in part 5 when we talk about product. Business planning. Can you afford to start? Can you afford to fail? Now, we covered this in part 2. Is there a market? Did you do any research? Are you aware of your competitors? Who are your customers? Again, very top line, but I sort of touched on this. The actual point on the checklist that I found was, do you have a business plan? And mine was, people might say, back of a fag packet. I had, these ideas in my head, but I talk around that in part 2 video. The legal bit. Okay. Was I going to register as a sole trader or a limited company? How was I going to operate? Now, I didn't know this. I referred to my sister-in-law, who's a trained accountant, and she gave me the sort of ins and outs. And look, to keep things simple, because that's not my area of expertise, it's just me. I didn't have any money in the business. I didn't want to complicate things. So I registered myself as a sole trader rather than incorporating and paying to do that and everything that comes with that. It wasn't necessary for me. When I say register, I had to get in touch with income tax and social security to let them know there were forms that I needed to fill out and send into them so they knew my status going from employed to self-employed as a sole trader. The people that I spoke to, if I had any questions, were incredibly helpful. It wasn't a complicated process, but it was one that needed to be done. Insurance. So I'm working from home. I needed to let my insurer know to make a note on our household policy. And also, because I'm making cake, God forbid I'd ever, cause anyone illness, but I needed public liability insurance. So again, I had a conversation with an insurance broker. He gave me guidance on what it was I needed to do that. Are there other regulations that you need to be aware of? So I'm working from home, I'm supplying food to the public. I needed, in order to trade legally, a rating and approval from environmental health, and what this entailed. Again, very, very helpful people. They came round and did an assessment on my processes, which I'd looked up, I'd found online. I'd done an online level 1 food safety course, and I found a document which covered everything if you were working with food. Now, my business is quite simple. I'm using eggs, butter, sugar. There's nothing, I'm not using meat. There's not room much for contamination or anything like that. It wasn't complicated, but I had this whole document that I'd worked through that I got from environmental health. So when they came to me, did my assessment, 5-star rating, tick. But this was something that I needed to think about. Finances. I mean, I've said before in other videos, numbers and stuff, I'm creative, I'm a cake artist. This was not my area of interest, but it is necessary. So do you need a separate bank account? From an income tax point of view, actually, no, you don't. For me, it was easier to have a separate account so I could reconcile. And how I did that was I didn't employ an accountant. I didn't have the budget for that. I sign up, I pay £8 a month for QuickBooks, which is an app online you can use on desktop. Really simple. You can take photos of your receipts. You can send out invoices through that, and it will keep track of all your finances. I'm a small operation. You know, I had deliveries of ingredients that I would need to account for, and invoices, but it wasn't a huge volume. I was able to do it myself. I dread the end of month when it comes around to accounting time, but it's not, you know, it's a job, this other hat that I have to do. And whilst we're on that, thinking about budget, did you have any? Well, honestly, in my business plan, back of a fag packet, no, I didn't. I knew my number, which we talked about in part 2, but otherwise I was literally working from zip. So how do you create a business from scratch? We'll go on to marketing strategy and how I found customers a bit later, but this checklist I kept coming back to. And so the bit that I do like, marketing. We've covered brand identity and how you might do that in parts 3 and 4. I can't stress enough how useful this was. I actually wrote all the things that I'd thought about down and created a brand Bible, a little document that had my story, the thing about my product, the things that I'd, around personality, tone of voice, how I want people to feel. I wrote everything so that I didn't have to remember everything while I'm trying to do my accounts. It was a point of reference for me, and I still go back to, and in fact, during this process, I have frequently referred back to all the thinking that I'd written down 4 years ago, nearly 5 years ago, when I'd started out on this process. Brand assets, so Facebook, Instagram, a domain name, checking that the name that I wanted, bakewithluce, was available. And then, let's think, product, place, price, promotion. Videos, part 5, 6, 7, 8, was all around the marketing mix. And having an understanding of that and what it means, when I came to implement stuff, I was just really clear on what it was I wanted to do and what I needed to do. Because I can tell you, once I started making cakes, there was no time for all of this. I had this very fortunate period of time in the 3 months that I was working out my notice and 4 months thereafter where I was part-time to really do the work. Because once I started, there was a danger that I was going to get in a heck of a muddle because there were a lot of things to think about. And so before we get on to a communications plan, a comms strategy, what that all looks like going out to find customers, this initial part of the suite of videos really useful, I think. Maybe you don't, I don't know. I'm sat here yabbering away. I'd be really curious to know what you actually think. I'm really keen to know if there are any of you that are thinking about starting your own business. Maybe you do and you found some interesting points that I'm talking about. Anyway, gosh, I've talked for long enough on this, but checklist. So before we go into more detail, we've covered the market. Here's the checklist. Make a note and you can start working through, because there are other hats other than the one that you are passionate about. Let me know. Mwah.